The night was cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you crave warmth in any form. I stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup, the steam rising in soft curls that fogged the window. Above the sink, my name is Clara, and at 44 I have worn the badge of single motherhood for most of my life. My son, Ethan, now 22, has been my anchor and mirror to keep going through the storms of life. We've always been a team, just two of us navigating the world with a closeness that felt unbreakable, but that night something shifted and I found myself standing on the edge of a precipice I never knew existed. Ethan came home late. His broad shoulders slumped, his dark hair falling into high sides. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that goes beyond physical. He'd been juggling a full-time job at a local bookstore and night classes at the community college, chasing a degree in literature. His passion for books was something we shared, but lately I could see the weight of his ambitions pressing down on him. Mom, he said, his voice almost a whisper. I don't feel so. Breathe. His hazel eyes, usually bright with a quiet intensity, were dull, shadowed with fatigue. I set the ladle down, my heart tightening with worry. You look wiped out, sweeter. Why don't you lie down for a bit? My bed's warm and the house is freezing tonight. Our old Victorian home with its creaky floors and drafty windows always took forever to heat up in the winter. Ethan nodded, too tired to work, and shuffled toward my bedroom. I followed, grabbing a heavy quilt from the linen closet, my maternal instincts kicking into overdrive. All I wanted was to make him feel safe, to ease the strain I could see etched into his face. In my room, Ethan collapsed onto the bed, his long frame sinking into the mattress. I draped the quilt over him, tucking it around his shoulders like I used to when he was a boy. He murmured a quiet "Thanks, Mom," and closed his eyes for a moment. It felt like any other night, me taking care of him trusting me to make things better. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest, feeling a familiar warmth in my chest, but then I did something I hadn't planned. I lay down beside him, telling myself it was just to keep him warm, to share the quilt in the chilly room. At first, it was innocent. The room was quite safe for the soft hum of the heater struggling to keep up Ethan's breathing's load, and I thought he'd fallen asleep, but then he shifted, moving closer, his body pressing against mine under fury of the quilt. My breath caught a flicker of unease sparking in my chest. He was just seeking warmth, I told myself, like when he was little and would crawl into my bed during a thunderstorm. But when his arm draped over me, pulling me gently closer, the air in the room seemed to thicken. I froze, my heart pounding. His touch was so familiar, but there was something different in it, a weight I couldn't name. I wanted to laugh it off, to say something like to break theme of it, but my voice wouldn't come. His warmth enveloped me, his steady breathing, a contrast to the chaos in my mind. I told myself it was nothing, just another comforting the sun. Then I felt it upon his under the quilt, unmistakable. Drawing my close waist away, authentic passion over me. This wasn't rapist. It wasn't supposed to happen. I leaped with it, losing my thoughts, following. Ethan was my son, my really the one who raised them. Sleepless nights and endless sacrifices, but in that moment with his steady simple, I felt something else, a call, warmth that wasn't maternal. That scared me to my core. I hated myself for it, for even noticing the way his breath felt against my neck, the way his fingers rested lightly on my arm. I wanted to push him away, to leap from the bed and drum, but I couldn't move. The silence was deafening, each second stretching into eternity. Ethan stirred his head, lifting slightly. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there that made my stomach twist, a softness, a vulnerability that mirrored my own confusion. Mama, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Is this okay? His gaze searched mine as I was as lost as I was caught in some strange current. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, anything to break the spell, but no words came. Instead, I nodded, a small hesitant movement that felt like a betrayal of everything I knew. He leaned closer, his fist inches from mine. My heart pounded so Loudly, I was sure he could hear this hand move, brushing a strand of hair from my face, a gesture so tender it maddened me. Chest ache, I closed my eyes, trying to conjure myself to remind myself who we were, but the warmth of his touch, that quiet intensity of his presence, pulled under. For a moment, I let myself feel it, the closeness, the connection that felt both familiar and terrifyingly Ethan just as quickly. Ethan pulled back, let out a shaky laugh, rubbing the back of his neck, his cheeks flushed. "Sorry, Mom," he said, his voice thick with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to." I didn't know what that was. The spell broke and reality crashed back, and I sat up, my hands trembling, trying to steady me breathing. "It's okay, Ethan," I said, forcing a smile that felt brutal. "We're both just tired. It's been a long day, Pete. It wasn't okay." The air between us washed heavy with unspoken questions. I wanted to reach out to hug him and pretend nothing had changed, but I couldn't. The moment had shifted something fundamental, and I didn't know how to fix it before I could say worthy. Doorbell rang, a sharp sound that cut through the tension like a knife. I jumped, grateful for the interruption, and hurried to the door. It was our neighbor Tom, a kind man in his late 50s with a weathered face and a warm smile. He held a flashlight, his coat dusted with snow. "Hey, Clara," he said, his voice gentle. "I saw your lights on and thought I'd check in. It's getting cold out there. Any trouble with the heater?" His concern was genuine, and for a moment I felt grounded by his presence, as if the melee of his visit could erase the strangeness of the night. "Thanks, Tom." "One?" said my voice, steadier than I felt. "The heater's been acting up. Actually, if you wouldn't mind taking a look." I stepped aside, letting him in, hyper-aware of Ethan watching from the hallway. His expression was unreadable, but there was a tightness in his jaw, flicker off something that looked like jealousy. The thoughts sent a chill through me. Was half feeling the same tangled emotions I was, or was I projecting my own confusion onto him? Tom moved to the living room, kneeling by the heater, his tools blinking. Softly, he made small talk, asking about Ethan's classes, about my job at the library. I answered automatically, my mind elsewhere. Evan stayed in the hallway, his arms crossed, his eyes darting between me and Tom. The tension in the room was palpable as a battle I didn't understand. I wanted to scream, to demand answers from Evan, from myself, but I kept my composure, smiling at Tom's jokes, threatening everything is fine. When Tom finished, he stood brushing his hands on his jeans. "All set, Clara," called me. If I tax up again, he closed it, even hissing a faltering for a fraction of acid, as if possessed and reported. When I fainted, walking him tucked down as it closed behind him, his eyes returned heavier than before. He was still in the hallway, his posture rigid. "You okay?" I asked, my voice soft-searching. He shrugged, high sighs avoiding mine. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just didn't expect Tom to show up." His tongue was clipped, and I felt a pang of guilt that I wasn't sure why I wanted. Topper seemed to ask what was wrong, but had turned and walked to his room, the door closing with a soft click that felt final. I stood there, alone in the dim light of the living room, my heart heavy with a mix of relief and dread. The night had unraveled. Something between us, something I couldn't name but couldn't ignore. I made my way to my room, sinking onto the bed, my thoughts a tangled messy, replayed every moment. The warmth of Ethan's touch, the look in his eyes, the way my own heart had betrayed me. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, torn between love for my son and a confusion that made me question everything. A soft knock at the door startled me, my pulse quickened, hope and fear mingling in my chest. "Come in," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan stepped inside, his expression guarded, his hand shoved into his pockets. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, the ceiling stretching between us like a chasm. "Mom," he said finally, his voice low, "I'm sorry, I don't know what's..." going on with me that earlier it was weird and he didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. His words were halting, each one laced with frustration and vulnerability. I could see the conflict in his eyes. The some storm I was battling. I reached out, placing a hand on his arm to gesture him into comfort, but feeling charged with something more. Ethan, it's okay, I said softly. I don't know, Mabe. We're both just feeling things you wouldn't understand. It's been just us for so long, and sometimes that makes things complicated. My voice trembled, but I held his gaze, willing him to see that I was as lost as he was. He nodded, his eyes searching mine, a mix of longing and uncertainty flickering in their depths. I don't want to mess this up, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're everything to me. The rawness of his words hit me like a wave, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I wanted to pull him close, to promise that we'd figure it out, but I hesitated, unsure if touch would heal or wound. Instead, I took a deep breath, studying myself. Maybe we need to take a step back, I said, my voice gentle but firm. We don't have to have all things worse tonight. Let's just give it time. Be okay, he nodded, and then in a gesture that caught me off guard, he leaned a shed on my shoulder. The way he used tone, he was small. The familiarity of it warmed me, but the undercurrent of tension remained a reminder that things weren't the same. I wrapped an arm around him, holding him close, my heart shaken with love and confusion. We sat like that for a long time, the silence a fragile bridge between us. I knew we couldn't stay in this moment forever, that we'd have to face the questions looming over us, but for now it was enough to be here at each other, even if the path ahead wasn't certain. The knock at the door came again, sharp and insistent. I tensed, pulling away from Ethan, our eyes meeting in mutual surprise. I stood, my legs unsteady, and opened the door to find Tom again, his face etched with concern. Clary, I'm sorry to barge in, he said, his voice urgent. You seemed off earlier, and I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I glanced back at Ethan, who was watching, his expression unreadable. And find Tom, my son, my voice trembling slightly. Just a quiet night, he studied me, then even his eyes narrowing slightly, as I could sense the weight in the air of light. He said finally, next door, I think. Maybe he left, and I closed the door, leaning against it, my heart wrenching, then stood moving closer, his eyes locked on mine. Mom, he said, his voice trembling. Maybe we shouldn't push this late in time, his words mirroring me on thoughts, and I nodded, relief and settled mingling in my chest. Your right eye said softly, we'll figure it out, we just need time. He nodded, and we stood there, the space between us both a comfort and a barrier. As I turned to leave, I felt a pang of loss, but also a flicker of hope. Whatever this was, we'd face it together, one step at a time. Thank you for staying with us through this story. If you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button. For broken vows, your support means the world and keeps us sharing stories that resonate. Don't forget to like if this tale moved you, and join our community for more heartfelt narratives. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel Sleep Story Room. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Very informative video. Stay blessed.